So welcome everyone to the webinar that we have for renewal schools, and specifically for schools that are in the 2016 cohort that are renewing right now and have been working for the past year or so to renew their Gold Star status, their RAMP status, and to just update their school counseling program. What we want to talk about in this webinar is using RSC during the Lilly Counseling Initiative planning phase. So we know we have some schools that are planning to, at the end of that planning phase, submit an implementation grant to Lilly. Some schools are not planning on implementing, on submitting an implementation grant, and some schools don't know. So we want to talk about how you can use what you're doing right now in all three of those scenarios, and that's what we're talking about in this webinar. Okay, so today's agenda is, if you're thinking about participating in Lilly's planning phase, should we use RSC? We think that's a really good match. You're already in the middle of a planning phase, so why not? The really cool thing is that Lilly can give you money now to do funding to do the rest of your RSC work in your renewal year. So, so we really suggest that all of our renewal schools definitely apply for the planning grant, because that could fund the rest of your advisory council meetings. It could fund you to do some site visits in the normal activity research step that we have planned. So yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Then we'll talk about, if you are thinking about the implementation funding, there's some things we want you to consider, and we'll kind of touch on those a little bit. And again, even if you think you're not going to apply for the implementation funding, you may hear things today that make you think, maybe I would like some money to implement our program. Okay, and then we'll talk about writing your planning grant proposal, and we'll go through that step by step. And so that, and again, even if you're not thinking about doing the implementation grant later, if you'd like to get just some, it doesn't have to be the whole amount. If you'd like to just get a couple $100s to help you with the rest of your RSC work, you can get that through this planning grant with Lilly. And then we've created a page to provide resources for Lilly's work, and we'll show you that too, so you know all of the resources that you have available to you. Okay, so Debbie told me yesterday that she talked to a school that had not heard yet about the Lilly Counseling Initiative. So just in case we have other schools that are like that, let's just go through real quickly what this initiative is. So there are two phases to this initiative. The first one is the planning phase that is happening second semester of this year. The good news for you is that you're already doing planning, so you've had a huge head start in this planning phase. So the planning phase is from January 20th, and actually we're going to start January. I wrote January 20th because that's when Lilly has said they'd notify all schools that schools have the planning grant. But so it's more likely, to be before that. We're actually going to start our planning phase on January 3rd. So January 3rd-ish to May 19th. So now, the purpose of this planning grant is to enable schools to design a comprehensive school counseling program. That's exactly what you're doing right now. So you already are implementing the planning phase. So why not get some funding to do it? So the purpose of the reason that Lilly is providing this this whole initiative is because they want to increase the number of K-12 students in Indiana who are emotionally healthy, realize academic success, graduate from high school, obtain post-secondary credentials, and are able to compete and prosper in a global economy as they live and work. So, that aligns perfectly with the mission of our organization at RSC. I think it probably aligns perfectly with your school. So, in my opinion, this is a perfect grant for you. The other thing that makes it perfect is that it's not competitive. So Lilly has agreed to fund every single district in the state to talk about and plan and think about school counseling. I like to think of this as a think tank. I mean, and I get so excited because, you know, potentially every district in the state could put together a think tank about school counseling. I mean, that is phenomenal. I mean, for our profession, it's just crazy. So, so we're really, really, really pleased about that. So remember, this is a non-competitive grant. It aligns with your mission, and it funds what you had already planned to do in the second semester. So the dollar amounts are up to $30,000 for districts with less than 5,000 students, 50,000 if you have 5,000 or more students. That doesn't mean that you have to apply for that amount. You know, apply for you know, $500 or just apply for $100 so you can feed your advisory council at the next meeting. So you don't have to apply for all that. Also, we're going to give you, you'll see later today, we're going to give you very concrete instructions about how to create the planning grant. So in language even to drop in. So if you're not, you know, if that's what's worrying you is writing your grant application, and maybe some of you are not applying for that reason, you know, we'll help you with that as well. The grant deadline is December 15th, so you have 9 days. But again, we're going to make this pretty easy for you, and you're already doing it. So this is just to me, this is a no-brainer that you would do this. Then at the end of the planning period, you know, always in our work, the last time you did this with us, the last thing that we always end with is budgeting, and you create a budget, and if we ask you if you don't have money, you know, that you write to somebody and ask for money. I mean, that's the last step of our process. So in our normal process, we end with funding. So this time, we actually have a good source for funding. So at the end of our process this year, you would have the ability to write an implementation grant to fund the activities that you come up with in this process. So the implementation period is a 4-year period, and reading between the lines, that kind of tells us a lot. That tells us that Lilly, I think, my opinion now, Lilly is expecting implementation grant apps that are very comprehensive, that are out of the box, very innovative, and sustainable. So what would you do during this implementation period? Well, you do all the things that you need to do to implement well the activities that you plan during RSC. So you might need professional development. So you would plan professional development in that implementation phase. You might need to purchase materials. You might need time to develop guidance lesson plans for this activity or that activity, or actually you're going to develop some of them with us, but you know, to further to do that. Or you may need time to set up a whole new delivery system like an advisor-advisee program or a community-based guidance initiative. So that the purpose of this implementation period and funding is to support you as you're implementing your plan that you write this year. The grant amounts are, I think, very large. $100,000 for your district if you have fewer than 1,000 students, and $100 per student if your district is over 100,000. Again, that doesn't mean that you have to apply for 100,000. Maybe you only need 5,000. So so again, you know, we always end up with this step. How are we going to fund our activities? But now we have a source. This is a competitive grant. Not all districts are going to get it. My guess is that, again, Lilly's probably looking for something that's very innovative, very sustainable, can be maybe replicated by other schools. Lilly on purpose is not providing any criteria for the implementation grant applications, and I think that's really smart, because what Lilly is wanting is for everybody, all of us, to be able to think out of the box. So, I mean, how many times in your career, I know I've been doing this for a lot of years, and this is the first time that I've ever seen a funder say, think out of the box, plan whatever you want to, submit it to us, and maybe there's funding for it. And I mean, that is just, I mean, I just can't emphasize this enough. This is so unusual and just very, very, we're very, very fortunate. So the grant deadline is May 19th. For the implementation grant, that fits with our RSC work, so that works out well. So again, we think both of these are very, wonderful for you. The planning grant, I think, is a no-brainer to get some funding to support the work that you're doing second semester. And then the implementation grant if you want funding to implement whatever you've got to have planned. Okay, so also on the implementation grant, so I'm talking the 4 years after this year, beginning in 2017 to 2021. This is just a heads up. We'll talk a whole lot more about this in the second semester. But we've spent a lot of time brainstorming ourselves and trying to think out of the box about, what would a really sound RSC school need next to, you already are going to have a plan, you've got data, you've got good programs, what would really be out of the box for you? And we're thinking that some of our RSC schools, not all of them, but some of them will want to transition from a school counseling program to a school counseling system. In the system, it would not just be school counselors that are delivering activities, but it would also be maybe a teacher advisor program or integration with academic curriculum so that your academic teachers are using guidance concepts in their real-world applications of their academic content. Maybe there's a community-based guidance initiative. Maybe parents are brought in to provide guidance, at home. So beginning in October 2017, so next year, we are going to be providing a whole set of resources to help schools develop a school counseling system rather than a school counseling program. And schools will talk about, are we going to incorporate advisor-advisee or community-based guidance or integration with the academic curriculum? How can we wrap school counseling all around kids? Everywhere they turn, there's adults giving them the same messages in a coordinated way, be it at church or their Boy Scout troop or in the grocery store or wherever. So that's kind of out of the box. My own school counseling program, when I received the National High School Counselor of the Year, that was, I think, why I got the award. It wasn't that I was so great. It was that we had created a school counseling system that was really everywhere. It changed the culture of our school. Also, we have a lot of experience delivering programming on this, workshop series and all that on a national level, every single one of these initiatives. So it's easy for us to jump in and help schools do this. So if this, kind of whets your appetite at all, and you weren't thinking about doing the implementation grant, this is something that maybe is exciting, and you might think again about doing that implementation grant. Also, I want to emphasize you do not have to go this route. This is just something we're going to present for your consideration. If you want to, fine. If you've got a different, model system or program that you want to implement with those implementation funds, that's fine too. We're just trying to support, and as always, you make the choices. Okay. So let's just jump into some of these questions then. Why should you use RSC as our program design process for the Lilly planning phase? So we just wanted to, if you're having any questions, we just really wanted to just remind you that RSC is a really good planning process. You're engaged with, I think, the best of the best. Having done this and researched this, I've never found a school counseling planning process that is stronger or has more support than what we provide. But just as a reminder, we're a proven process. We've got research that shows that we raise academic achievement. We have research that shows that we are, have a sound professional development model. Obviously, what we do works, or we wouldn't have 129 ramp schools in Indiana. We have lots of testimony from organizations like the Indiana State Chamber of Commerce, who says that RSC, in the bottom quote there, RSC provides a consistent and comprehensive process for schools to examine, organize, and redesign their school counseling efforts based on student goals and outcomes. So, we've got people that are, these organizations that are providing testimony, and then lots of things that you guys have said about what the strength of RSC. So it's a proven process. The other thing is that RSC is a planning process. It's a model planning process. So one of the things that in the Lilly RFP, when they talk about planning, they say, here's some things that you might consider doing in the second semester in the planning phase. One of the things they say is that you should do self-studies. Oh my gosh, we counted up, you've done 9 self-studies as part of RSC. You've got the school counseling program self-study, the school counselor self-study, the counselor time use self-study. In the survey, we studied 5 different areas, and you got out 5 different reports from that. And all of that is disaggregated. People that are surveying using SurveyMonkey, they don't disaggregate their data. They can't in that model. And they also don't come up with the student list generator. So you're really rich on your student survey. And then the counselor survey asks about the student opportunities. So you have studied yourselves like amazingly well. One question that I was asked is, does RSC have a parent survey or a teacher survey? And I wanted to help you understand that we used to have those. And what we found was that the responses on those surveys were not different than the responses that we got on the student surveys. And to save counselors time, we therefore omitted those surveys because we didn't think that we were gaining anything that we couldn't gain, that we weren't gaining from the student survey. So that's why we're not doing a teacher or a community survey or parent survey, which we used to do. Okay, so and again, all of this information that you gathered through these self-studies informed your decisions along the way about goals, priority goals, and root causes. Okay, another thing in the Lilly RFP it says is that schools should involve the community, and you guys have done that. So it's not just school counselors sitting down at the table. You have your advisory council, and we've checked to make sure that you have teachers, students, parents, community organizations, and somebody from business and industry on your council. And we also, when we read your minutes, your summaries of your meetings, we're checking to make sure that they're involved. So one of the things that we'll talk about in a minute is possibly strengthening your advisory council to include very specific types of organizations. I'll talk about that more in a sec. Okay, and then Lilly also suggests that you should research model programs, and right now we have 2 sources for you to do that with. We have a searchable database of school counseling lesson plans from all the hundreds of schools that have used RSC, and then we also have a searchable database of community guidance activities from 2,000 organizations in Indiana that have worked in one of our other initiatives. So we have some databases that you can search for model programs. This is an area, though, that I think the Lilly initiative is going to help us do a better job at, because we can now use funding, planning grant funding, to do site visits, to bring in speakers to your school. I mean, there's a whole lot of things that we can do as we're researching activities, and I'll talk about that again in a few minutes. So, is it a good thing that you're involved with RSC with regard to your Lilly initiative? Absolutely. It's a proven process. It gives you all the tools that you need, and you've started it. You're partway through it. So, do you need another process? I think that would be really confusing. So, if other organizations are talking to you about getting engaged with their process, I think you can't have 2 processes. So, you can maybe get some tools from another organization, but in terms of process, there can be 1 process. Otherwise, you're going to be duplicating efforts. So, okay, wanted to talk about that a little bit. Let me stop there real quickly, check in with Debbie. Any questions, Debbie, so far?
No questions.
Okay, good. So, and please type those questions in, because we really want to make sure that we've answered all questions before we end this webinar. So, okay, so if you are thinking about the Lilly implementation grant, we want to really prepare you so that when you apply for that implementation grant, when your district applies, that you really have a sound implementation grant. So here's some things to think about. First question is, do you want to apply? And I've kind of been talking about that throughout the webinar so far. Do you want to apply for that funding? Okay, so that's one decision you'll have to make. And I kind of think it's almost too early to make that decision. I think we really need to look at all your goals and all that first before you finalize that decision. But I know you have a sense of that right now. Then, if so, one of the questions that I would have if I were you is, what's it going to take to be competitive? Because that's a competitive grant. So, and again, this is just coming from Sue Reynolds and ASA. This is our perspective. Remember that Lilly has not published any kind of review scoring, application scoring grid or anything like that. So we're just kind of thinking that if it's a 4-year grant and with the size of the grants, what is Lilly probably looking for? So we do not think that Lilly is looking for just one more add-on activity. So if what you're thinking about, is you want to take kids on a field trip to visit other campuses and you just want money to pay for the bus, I don't think that would be competitive. I mean, you could put in an application, you never know, it depends on who else applies, but my guess is that if you're just adding on an activity, I don't think that's what Lilly had in mind. However, if you're thinking about doing a significant, something where you're going to really look at significant community involvement, and it's going to be very innovative and sustainable. When you read the RFP, those things appear over and over again in the RFP: community involvement, community organizations, innovative, sustainable, reaching all kids, and then the things that we talked about earlier, that kids are successful at school and socially, emotionally healthy and all that. So if you're open to, really thinking, if I had a gazillion dollars and all the time in the world, what would we do? And then, just dream openly without any constraints of resources. Then I think that you'd want to think about this implementation grant. So, okay. So if you are thinking then about the implementation grant, are there parts of your work that you've already done that you need to strengthen? So I've talked in the past few weeks with schools that already had RSC that are actually coming back into a first-year cohort next year to strengthen everything about their RSC program. That wouldn't make sense for you because you're already halfway through the process. So specifically with you guys, we do want to, though, go back and say, are there parts that you need to strengthen? So you already have a council. Do you need to strengthen it? You already have a vision. You already have goals. How about expanding resources? If you're thinking about the Lilly grant, you now have mega access to mega dollars. So expanding resources, if you're thinking about the Lilly grant, I think would be a step that you would need to redo. So you'd expand your resources to show that you have potentially, the availability of $100,000 or whatever portion of that would come to your school. And then you'd be thinking about, okay, if we have that much money, we could probably tackle more priority goals than the 2 that we originally thought. Because now we have funding for professional development, we have funding for resource, development of resources, all of that. And so priority goals, and then if you have new priority goals, then you've got to look at your root causes, what's getting in the way of those priority goals. So our thinking is that if you are really interested in creating a competitive implementation grant, that these are 3 steps that you need to go back and strengthen, given that we now have more funding. And then I put activities in a lighter font there because that's a step you haven't gotten to yet, so we won't have to redo anything there because we haven't done it yet. So, okay, there's one other thing that popped into my head. In terms of expanding these resources, I know one thing, I think the first thing that we heard from everybody when this money became available is, oh my gosh, now we can hire another counselor. Remember that Lilly's emphasis has been on sustainable. And in most cases, when money is used to buy a position, when the grant is gone, the position goes away and the whole program just dies. So So in terms of, using these funds to for buying positions, I don't think that that's something that would be sustainable, and I suspect that Lilly may feel the same way. I'm not sure. That's why we're going to how do you use already people that are already there, teacher advisors, community organizations, classroom teachers, parents in the delivery of the program, because that is sustainable. Once you get them trained, once you get the materials developed for them, that can last forever, So, okay. Okay, so that's that. So we think that you might want to strengthen those three things. And then I also wanted to talk to you about strengthening your council. We know for some of you it was hard to get the council members at the table. Some of you have done the minimal amount of work to make that happen. Some of you have done a phenomenal job at getting people to the table. So one of the things, if you are interested in the Lilly grant, we would really emphasize strengthening your council. That's, based on my years and years of doing this, my gut is that that's going to be really important in your implementation grant. So there are two organizations that if you don't have at the table, we think need to be at the table. One is economic development. I know a lot of people have gone that route already, but there is an economic development council in your county. We'd really suggest you call them, explain to them what you're doing, and ask if they would send a representative to be on your council. I think they would jump at that opportunity because this gives them a way to impact human resources rather than just material resources. So, okay, and then also, since Lilly emphasized social emotional well-being as one of the purposes of their grant, we also think it will help you to have a mental health organization at the table if you don't already. I know a lot of you do. And I maybe wouldn't, if there's a mental health agency or a mental health organization, people that are kind of thinking about not only kids' needs, but what are mental health workers going to need to be like years from now. So yeah, so those are two groups that, based on what's written in the RFP, we think need to be at the table. Okay, then if you are thinking about having a systemic approach where we're not hiring new people, but we're going to think about how can we use teachers as advisors, how can we integrate guidance content into the math classrooms or the English language arts curriculum, how can we do the integration, how can we involve the community organizations in delivering part of the guidance system or building upon what we've already done or strengthening what we're doing. If you're thinking about that, then we also would like you to think about strengthening your council so that you not only have advisors on your council, but you have people down the road that will help you implement the program. So with that, we would really suggest faith-based organizations that can implement activities with their youth groups, youth serving organizations, Boy Scouts, Girls Clubs, Girl Scouts, Boys Club, 4-H, all those groups that work with kids. Service clubs, and that actually I think is a really good one. I did some research a couple of years ago, and like 80% of the major service clubs in Indiana, Kiwanis, Rotary, have in their mission statement something to do with youth. And so that could be, they could be a whole group of volunteers that would do projects on your behalf or would coordinate their projects with you. So service clubs, I think, are really big. The public library, that could be an information source going out into the community, another wraparound service. And then higher ed, who are, have the same goals as you do, the admissions departments. Just as an example, in my school counseling program, Franklin College admissions staff, the entire staff came into my school to do meetings with kids one-on-one about how to interpret their PSAT scores. So, there's just all kinds of things that these folks can do. So again, if you're thinking down the road about having a kind of a systemic approach or a wraparound approach where it's not just the school counselors that are guiding kids, but everybody in a coordinated way, I definitely would suggest you get these people to the table. So that kind of changes the role of your council, and we wanted to talk about that too. One change we're going to make we're going to take the word advisory out of the council name. So it's not going to be the School Counseling Advisory Council anymore. It's just going to be the School Counseling Council. And then you'll decide what you want their role to be, if it's going to be just an advisory role, or if you're going to want it to be both an advisory role and an implementation role. So, okay, so something for you to think about. But again, if you're interested in the implementation funds, this is another kind of, something that is just my gut is telling me is going to be important, is looking at bringing all these different types of community organizations to the table. Another one, if you're looking at sustaining and you think you might need additional funding, although I would suggest writing an implementation grant that would not need additional funding after 4 years. But if you do, the Community Foundation, would be good to have at the table. And really, since you don't know what direction you're going, I'd maybe get them there too, because they certainly have access to local dollars. Okay, so also wanted to mention activity research. I talked about how we provide these two different databases. In your activity research, which is your next step, Lilly has also provided a research and resources document that's very, very comprehensive. It's 8 pages of one after another different resources. Also, if you apply for the planning funding, you'll be able to do site visits. So if you hear of a cool program that is in Texas and you'd like to go visit that, write that into your planning grant. If you would like somebody from that school to come talk to you, write that into your planning grant. Also, you could, at your exploring activities, you could go to conferences. There is a very good conference in San Diego in March called the Evidence-Based School Counseling Conference. We've been to that several times. I've presented RSC at that several times. But that would be one, again, that you could write into your planning grant. Okay, then we also wanted to give you a heads up that we are in the process of creating an ASA site visit guide that will help you understand, think about like what you would do in a site visit. I know the first time I did a site visit, I had no idea what to do. So, what kind of things do you look for? What kind of questions do you ask? So we'll put that in it. Then the other thing we're going to suggest is different places that you might consider visiting. The places that we suggest will all be places that have implemented a systemic approach to school counseling. So if you want to go see how a teacher advisor program works and talk to the counselors, talk to the teacher advisors, if you want to go see how a community-based guidance initiative works and how that coordinates with the school counseling program, you can go talk with those people, talk to the community people, talk to the school people, see how they set that all up. So that is coming. That won't be ready until February, but that's coming to support you. So, okay, wanted to make you aware of that. Excuse me. Okay, so now here is, I'm going to go back a couple slides. If you are interested in expanding these resources, that means that you're going to have to go backwards and redo some steps. And we've been really racking our brains to figure out how we could support you. And I think we've come up with a really good plan to support our schools that want to strengthen now their RSC initiatives because they have this additional funding. So our plan is going to enable you to go back with our support to expand your resources to now that with the addition of the Lilly funding, to re-identify your priority goals because now you have more money, and to re-identify your root causes. And then our plan will postpone activity selection until February and March. So let me explain it to you, and I think it's going to be good for everyone. Okay, so what we're going to suggest is that what we're going to do is change your school from a renewal cohort school to a first-year school. You actually will still be a renewal school. You'll just be progressing through the process with the first year schools. And let me show you why this works so well. So here is the timeline for the first year cohort. They have completed their collection of data, their vision, and their goals. Today, actually, they're going to start this month expanding resources. So if you jumped in with this cohort, if we were to jump you in with this cohort, you would be ready today. Your task for December would be to do this expand resources step. So you could do that a couple of ways. You could just sit down yourselves and rewrite the expand resources stuff with the addition of the Lilly money. Or you could bring your advisory council back together to do that. Your strengthened advisory council, that might be a good reason to bring in the advisory council, the new members, and when you have them all together. So to say, okay, we have expanded resources now. Or you could decide to do nothing. So if you're a school that doesn't want to apply for the implementation funding, then do nothing. Okay, so that would be your step for today, for this month. And then also establishing your priority goals. So that would be your task this month, would be to update those if you want to. If you don't, then don't. Next month, actually this is December, January. In the beginning of February, we'll talk about updating your root causes. And then in February, you would start researching activities. So this would give you time to update these parts and strengthen them if you want to, because now you have additional money. And then we would jump in with what we had planned to do this month, the research activities. You would just postpone until February. And then the rest of this would be, the same steps. It would just be, that you would be doing it later in the school year. This would also give you time when you're ready to research activities to have our site visit guide. And so you've got that, and you can just run with it. Then in preparation, that's a step that we always do, so you're scheduled to do that anyway. But those of you who are wanting to apply for the Lilly funding would also create a 4-year timeline there with our support. And then in May, a step that we always do is that budget. We would, those of you who are planning on doing the Lilly funding would then create the funding that you'd want to put into your implementation grant. And then on May 8th, those of you who are not doing Lilly funding would not have a step here. If you are doing Lilly funding, you would turn in your activities and your funding request to your district and ask them to include you in the district's grant application. So again, I'm going to go back to one thing I forgot to say. So in December, the training for this in expanding resources and priority goals is actually this afternoon. But we know that you probably can't attend that. If you can, register right away, that would be fine. But if not, we'll archive the video, and so you could watch the video, do this task in January, and then jump in here in February to research activities, and then the rest of this would be the same. Okay, let me see. So to do this, and we need everybody to do this because, again, everybody will be in the same plan. It's just some of you, if you decide not to do the Lilly grant, you're going to have an extra month off, and we'll come back and explore activities in February. If you are going to do the Lilly grant, then you would have January activities to do that we're training for today, and then February activities to do. So, okay. Okay, so what we need you to do, we need everybody to switch themselves to a first-year school. And again, that doesn't really make you a first-year school. You're in our system, you're still a renewal school, and you'll still appear to DOE and everybody else in all of our records as a renewal school. This will just get you into the first-year process. So, okay, so you're going to click on RSC uses, and I would do this as soon as we finish, please. RSC uses, you're going to click on first year process and then save. Then, if you do not want to strengthen parts of your previous work, you would just jump in, you're on hold now, you'll jump in February, and when we start talking there about exploring activities, you'll be able to do that with us. And then in March, you'll plan your activities. If you want to start doing that exploration and planning right now, I mean, that's fine, but we would provide your support on that in February. So, okay, if you do want to strengthen your previous work, then you would start December, January on expanding resources, and so you'd say I have $100,000 or whatever is the plan, and then identifying your priority goals. So you jump in with us earlier if you do want to strengthen your work. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to talk about is writing your grant. I'm sure I have questions, and maybe it's too fuzzy right now to have questions. You'll have questions later, but let me jump in. Debbie, is there questions?
Yes. We have one question. Is the grant funds for implementation grant to be used over a 4-year period with possible renewal of grant in 2021?
No, it's just our understanding, and again, all these Lilly questions I would ask Lilly, but our understanding from reading all of their work and attending their workshops is, and talking with them, is that it's a one-time 4-year grant. Schools will receive, right now their plan is that schools would receive the funding in one lump sum at the beginning of the 4 years, and then you would have that over 4 years.
That's all I have.
Okay, it was that question from Patty Hagan. I see she has a question in here.
Yes, that was
That was from Patty. Okay.
That was Patty.
Thank you, Patty. Good to hear from you. So, okay. So let's talk about writing now. And again, we've been talking about preparing for the implementation grant during the planning phase. Now let's talk about how to get some money for the planning phase. How can you get some money to support what you're doing right now in RSC? So, writing your your Lilly planning grant. First of all, I've mentioned before, this is a non-competitive grant. This is a quote from Lilly. We hope to award planning grants to all eligible school corporations and charter schools that submit complete applications following the guidelines shown on pages 5, 6, and 7 of the request for proposals. So we're going to walk you through this. We have like dissected pages 5, 6, and 7, but again, you should read 5, 6, and 7 yourself so that you are satisfied that your planning grant application follows those guidelines. I think if you're working with us, we're going to make sure that you follow those guidelines, but the onus is on you to make sure that you're following those guidelines. And I'll show you how to get the RFP in a sec. And then the other thing is that your grant proposal has to be postmarked by December 15th. Remember, this is a non-competitive grant. As long as you follow those guidelines, you'll be okay. So, okay. So I mentioned that we created this Lilly page, and there's the address, www.asainstitute.org/Lilly. And on that Lilly page, you're going to see our suggested language for your planning grant. So, okay, let me go to that page now, and we'll show you where that is. So I'm going to go to our website /Lilly, and that brings you up to the page. Okay, so a couple things that you don't need on this page. One is you do not need to apply for school assistance because you are already receiving our school assistance, so you don't need to apply, you don't need to pay $550. So you're all fine there, okay? We also have district assistance, and I'm not going to talk about that a lot today, but if there is more than one school in your district that is an RSC school, I would really suggest that you make your district people aware of this deliverable, of this option. So this is a little 30-minute video they could watch. Here's the deliverables that we provide for the district, and here's how the district enrolls. Basically, what this does is it helps the district come to the table with you to look at what you're doing, to see if there is overlap between schools, and to help you see places where you might work together, or maybe one school is omitting something that's maybe important that another school is doing. So say, for example, I've got 2 high schools, and I'm the district person. I'm working with ASA, and ASA is saying, okay, let's look at the activities that all of your schools have planned. Let's look for overlaps, and let's look for omissions. And so your district person goes in and they say, oh my gosh, our high school A is planning a college fair and high school B is planning a college fair. They could work together and save a lot of time and resources. And so, as a district person then, I'm on the phone to both schools or sending both schools an email and saying, do you realize you're both doing this? You might want to work together. Another thing I could do as a district person that will suggest is I might say, I could do that on behalf of the schools. We'll do that as a district initiative. I can manage it, and we'll just ask the schools if they'd like to turn that over to us and take one more thing off their plates, and we'll provide that. Did not take a master's degree in school counseling to organize a college fair. So, so those are the kinds of things we'll suggest. And then we also look for omissions. So let's say we've got 2 middle schools, and one middle school is having kids develop a high school course plan, and the other middle school's not. And the district thinks that that's something, that probably every student in the district should be doing. They might call the other school and say, we noticed you're not doing this. Is there a reason for that? Maybe you're already doing it, and so that's not why it's down as a goal. Or if not, we want to make you aware that this other school is doing it, and we think it would be nice if every kid in the district did this. So, so that's what the kind of the things that we'll be doing with your district. We also know that districts sometimes like to have mandates. They like to say, okay, all schools are going to work on FAFSA in our district this year. If your district is one that mandates, we're going to help them understand when in the process is the time to tell you what their mandates are, so that you can work it into your system. So it's about coordinating, it's about monitoring, and then at the end of all of this, we will be providing support for districts as they write their implementation grant. We've also will do reviews for districts that are enrolled with us of the planning grant. So I know one question we had from schools is, Sue, would you read my planning grant? I'd love to, but we have hundreds of schools involved in RSC. I don't have time to read hundreds of planning grants. But when a district is involved, we'll make the time for that. Since it's the district really that's writing the grant application also. The other thing is that if every school in your district is not involved in writing in RSC, I would be, if I read a district's application, I would be reading about programs that I don't know about, that I'm not familiar with. So I just really wouldn't be in a good position to have a good opinion about your planning grant unless I know that every school in RSC is involved. So a couple of reasons why we're not reading grants for individual schools, but we'll read for districts that are involved with us. Okay, then the other thing here you've got is, I'm looking at the time. I'm going to run over a little bit. I'll try to hurry. This is just a description of what we're doing with our delivery models in the implementation phase. Here are videos that we've created a video series about Lilly and how we work with schools and districts. You don't need any of that. You really don't need any of this. This is all kind of stuff to help new schools consider RSC. What you do need is suggested Lilly planning grant language, and I'm going to go over that with you real quickly. So what we did is we tried to create a template for you. We would suggest that you not use our words exactly, but we wanted to give you an idea of what you might include in different places. So we set this up so that you could kind of use this as your template. So planning grant proposal from name of your school. We gave you a link here. Lilly wants a cover sheet, so we gave you a link right here to that cover sheet. Some narrative, and then we've given you some suggestions for what you might include in your narrative. Okay, then going on, I'm sorry, let me back up. These are just important notes. When I get down to the narrative part, here's notes that we put in. We suggest you put in an introduction, but we're telling you Lilly did not ask for this. We think that there's a good reason for talking about your demographics a little bit, but especially this gives you a chance to talk about your rationale. And if your rationale for applying for the grant is the same as Lily's rationale, finding typos as we go through this, for providing the grant, make sure you make that obvious. So this allows Lily to see, you know, we're on the same wavelength as you. You're providing this funding because you have a dream. We're doing the work because we have the same dream. We're also thinking that even though this is a non-competitive grant, this statement might help set you up a little bit for the later competitive implementation grant. Okay, brief overview of the current school counseling program. In this section include items that define your program. And so we think what defines your program is your mission, priority, goals, and activities. These are linked because if you click them, it will take you to your school's mission. It will take you to your priority goals that you've put in our system. So you can, that's just a shortcut to save you some time that you can just pull pieces out of those. And then we've given you a tip here. Since Lily repeatedly talks about community involvement, we would suggest that that you mention that you have a council, and you know that your council is progressed is progressing through a vision-based, data-driven planning process. Okay, current strengths and weaknesses. Strengths are, we think you have a ton of strengths that most schools don't have, that at least the ones that, you know, we're not involved with, or haven't somehow gotten involved with some other initiative. Most schools don't have data-driven school counseling. So you have data-driven program, you have a council, you monitor multiple data types, and so these three things, that makes your school counseling program hugely strong, and I think speaks very well about you. And then individual activities that make you proud, you know, just things that you think are your strengths. And then challenges, we think it's okay to have challenges because that's why we're doing that's why Lily's doing this whole thing, is to help you conquer these challenges. So before writing about your challenges, you could review these documents, and the other thing is that we think it would make your application always strong. What makes applications always stronger is when you can back up your statements with data. So you could say, you know, according to our root causes report, you know, these are some of the challenges that we have. According to our student surveys, these are some of the guidance needs that our kids have. So, or even, you know, pull out the data and put it in there. Yeah, so that's that section. On the community partners, you can certainly mention your steering team. There's a link to the roster, your community council, and if you have any partners that partner with you in delivery, in the delivery of programs, I would certainly mention that as well. So you want to mention the partner and then explain what their contribution has been. Your level of commitment. Every school district is going to say, you know, we're highly, deeply committed. Everybody's going to say that. You can prove that by your participation in RSC. You can say, as evidence of our commitment to developing a model school counseling program, you know, we have already engaged in a planning process with redesigning school counseling that has required us to collect data to do self-studies. You know, and we will continue that process in the second semester. Okay, planned strategies and activities. On this one, we gave you a description of what we do with you. So let me reword that. We've given you a description of what you'll be doing with us. So this is a part where I would just cut and paste and edit it a little bit to say, you know, in January I'll be doing this, in February I'll be doing this. Or if you're not going to strengthen your program, you would say, you know, we have already conducted self-studies, put together a council, you know, we already have goals, we already have root causes, and in February we're going to start, or in January we're going to start exploring model programs, and then in March and then just pick up right here in March. So, okay. So this is the part probably that's the most important section of your planning grant, is telling, you know, what you're going to do. And so we tried to kind of give you some thoughts on how you might describe that. Okay, implementation grant developers would be your steering team and your council. So you'd list them. And then technical assistance needs, we just, gave you a statement. One need we have is for somebody to help us with the program design process, and that are engaging with ASA to do that for you. Okay, here's a sample budget. So this is going to differ depending on how much funding is actually going to come down to your school. So you want to talk to your district and say, okay, I know we got 50,000. How much of that can I use for my planning process in my school? Or I know we got 30,000. What can I use? So we are thinking that just in an average school, we're thinking that if the money got divvied up evenly between an average district with the average number of schools, the average would be $3,000 per school. So roughly. So what we did here is we're just helping you think about how you might want to spend those funds. So this is, in my grant applications, this is always kind of what I do, the format that I follow. So I put in the line item, the amount that I'm asking for. So you wouldn't say per school, you would just have a dollar amount in there. A little narrative explaining how I'm going to spend that funding. And then I always like to give the funder some funding notes to tell them how I came up with this amount. I just think it shows the funder that I'm well thought out, that I wasn't just, making a pie in the sky guess, that I'm actually going to do this work. And, it tells me a lot when I read a grant app and I see that they put this thought in. On the other hand, the downside of putting this detail in is that it kind of locks you into that. If you decide, later that, you want to take two people and, I don't know, it just kind of locks you into this, I think, if you spell it out. But I don't mind being locked in when I do these because I'm well thought out at this point. So, okay, but here's what we're suggesting. We're suggesting that, you maybe think about doing at least one, let me go back up to the top. We're suggesting you won't need this. You don't need the $550 for technical support, so you would take that out because you don't have to pay us. Printing, if you're not able to print in-house, we're suggesting $50 to print outside for your council meetings. Travel, since you're not doing this technical support, maybe you can take two people to visit places. So that would be, I usually figure $890 per person. Meetings, notice that, I'm estimating for this, sample budget, 20 people would come to the council meeting. I'm budgeted $13 to cater a meal for them, and have three meetings, and, I put that dollar amount in there. And then conferences, if you're, to attend the San Diego conference, this is, maybe 3 nights lodging. The registration fee is $160. So yeah, so something to put in there. So, I'd spend some time thinking about, I have money now to support RSC. How many meetings do I have left with my council? And you'll need to think about, am I going to meet with them to redo my priority goals and, all that? Am I going to bring in new council members, and maybe I just want to have a meeting to bring everybody up to speed? And go back to the very beginning to do an intro to ASA or to RSC. I think everybody's kind of in a different position, so you'll need to kind of think that through. One thing I don't have in this budget that you would also be able to afford because you don't have the technical support is you might want to put in a line item for contractual, and that would be to hire a school counselor from maybe that you've read about online that has a really cool program, or later when we give you the list of suggested site visits, instead of you going there, you call a school and say, would you come here and talk to all the schools in our district about how you set this up? So contractual, that line item would allow you to bring people into your school, so you pay them a stipend in their travel expenses. So okay. So that's that. And again, we tried to make it, pretty simple. In this section, another thing that I like to do when I'm filling out grant applications is I want the funder, I want to put things in the exact format that the funder talked about it in. in the RFPs, so that when they're looking for something, in case they do have a number scale system, when they're looking for something, they know where to find it. So this column over here is things that they've asked for, a brief overview of the school counseling program. And what I would do is just take this out and type it in here. Then they know exactly where to go to get that. Current strengths and challenges, they know exactly where to go. Yeah, so, and then the only section that we put in that they did not ask for is this introduction. You may or may not want to put in the demographics, but I would definitely put in the rationale for me, because I'd want them to know I'm not just applying for this to get the money. Your mission and my mission are the same, and I'm going to be working on this not just for the money or not just to please you, but because in my heart of hearts this is important to me. So, okay, I think that's it. I'm sorry we've been over a little bit, just lots to cover. Questions. Debbie, what questions do we have? Or if you have questions, type them in, because when we run out of questions, we'll close.
Yes, I don't see any questions right at this time.
Okay. Okay.
So can you reiterate what what their tasks should be?
Yeah, so your task right now is to, I would actually, that's a really good question, Debbie. Let's go ahead and let's write this down so we can see it as well. I think right now, let's do this. Just going to copy a slide so I can get the formatting. Okay, so your tasks are, first thing we're going to do is in the RSC online system, you're going to change yourself to a first-year school, knowing that you're really a renewal school. That's just going to get you into their calendar. We're looking for their calendar. They don't do, at this point, they're not doing any activities that you're not doing, so it's no additional work. It's just that it makes you into a different calendar. Okay, then I would get together with your steering team. And I would ask these questions. The first question would be, are we interested in strengthening any of our previous work? Okay. Even if you're not applying for the Lilly implementation grant, you may want to strengthen your work. But if you are, I would definitely do that. So, and if you are, you would be going back to expand resources, and then priority goals, and then root causes. Those would be the steps that you would be revisiting. As well as, and this is a big one, I'm going to put this in bold, your council members. Okay. And if so, that means that you're going to engage, re-engage. You're going to let me do it this way. If so, that means that you would need to either participate or watch the December webinar, participate live, or watch the archive version, and you would just start up with this there. So if the answer to that is yes, that's what you're doing. If the answer to that is no, then you are going to participate. Let me back up. You're going to begin researching school counseling activities, and you're going to participate in the February webinar. Okay, I think that's kind of it in a summary. So yeah, so a quick meeting with your steering team to decide, do you want to strengthen your work? That's the big question. And strengthening would mean especially your council members, but revisiting, as I put that, revisit, expand resources, priority goals, and root causes. So if the answer is yes, then you're going to participate in the December webinar. And if the answer is no, you're going to participate in the February webinar and begin researching school counseling activities right now. And then we'll also talk about that in February. The topic of that is research activities. Okay, good question, Debbie.
And those are first year that are going to participate in the first year December webinar.
Right. So yeah. December first year webinar. Okay.
So then Jane asks, do we need to have a December council meeting?
Oh, that's another good thing. Okay, so I'm going to need a smaller font. Hang on here. Okay, so do we need to have a December council meeting? So if the answer is yes, and we're going to strengthen our program, then your next question, oops, sorry. Then your next question is, how are we going to do that? No. Let's make it more specific. Who's going to revisit those things? Is it just going to be the steering team, council, individual? So so in terms of answering your question, if you decided you are going to revisit, the first thing up in December would be this expand resources and priority goals. And actually, that's a 2-month segment. We always go December, January together because of the holiday break. But so if the answer is that you want to involve the whole council in this discussion, then you would reconvene your council in right now and to have this discussion. And another question in here. That was such a good question, Debbie. We kind of talked about this, but I think it helps to make it in writing so it's concrete. Do you need new council members? And if yes, how are you going to get them up to speed? Okay, so if this were me and I wanted to strengthen my program, what I would do, first of all, I'd want to involve the whole council, or at least give them the opportunity to participate if they wanted to. So, I'd explain to them that you now have access to this huge amount of money and that you're going to need to rethink some of your program. And I would meet, and then I would also invite new members to be on my council, so I really made sure I have a good, strong council. I think that is really going to be important. So the mayor's office, chamber of commerce, your economic development council, I'd really get as many big players in there as you could. And then I would have a meeting with them in December, the new members, to bring them up to speed. And then I would meet with everybody in January to expand resources and priority goals. So let me write down the suggestion is December, new members, and then January, priority goals. Okay, let me make the font smaller again. That would be the way that I would do it. But again, I think all of our schools now that we're serving are kind of different in where they are and how they're going to want to approach this. So there's really no right or wrong answer in terms of doing this. You just have to figure out what's best for you. Now, if you do not want to, and let me answer that same question a different way. If you do not want to strengthen your program, then you would not need a meeting in December or January. You would participate in this February webinar on research activities, and you would start back up in February if you're not looking to strengthen anything, if you're happy with what you've got. Okay, I tell you what, let's do, when sometime later today, I'll type this up in an email and send it to all of you so that you've got something, in front of you that's printed, and you can always revisit this webinar, the archived webinar too, but I think it'd be good for you to have this in writing. So I'll type this up in an email and send it to all of you. What other questions?
Jane, thanks. Jane says thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Other questions? That was a really good question.
No, that's it.
Okay. Okay. One other thing that just occurred to me that would be helpful for us. Let's see. We said up here that we're going to update the online system. If you know right now that you're not going, no, let's have everybody do this so we know. Would you all send Debbie an email and just let her know if you intend to apply for A, the planning grant, and B, the implementation grant. Remember, the planning grant is due in 9 days, but hopefully with that template you've got what you need, that you can whip that out pretty quickly. And again, you don't have to apply for the whole thing. If you just want $100 to provide one meal, yeah, you could apply for less money. Although, if you're planning on making this stronger and you're going to bring your new members in, and you're, inviting the mayor or whoever to really beef this up, I mean, take them out to dinner at the country club, and, sweeten it for them a little bit to show how much you appreciate the time that they're volunteering to come meet with you. You could have all of your meetings with your council from now on at the country club, so yeah, so that's that's often done. We've never done that in RSC because we've never had funding. But when funding is available, those are the kinds of things that it's spent on. To show people how much you appreciate their time, you take them out to dinner or lunch or whatever. Okay. But yeah, so if you would send Debbie an email, just let us know what you're intending to do. That would be helpful. We are thinking that you're all applying for the implementation grant. I mean, how often do we get money for school counseling? We've all, said forever we need money for school counseling, and now here it is. I mean, we're just assuming that everybody will apply. But let us know. Okay, any other questions, Debbie?
No, thank you. Got them covered.
Okay, that sounds good. And again, I apologize that we went long. We just knew that there was a lot to cover today. We'll archive this if anybody else wants to see it, and thank you for participating, and I'll follow up with an email to you as well. Okay, thanks everybody. It's an exciting time to be in school counseling with all of this opportunity to have time to talk more and funding to support it. But at the same time, we know that it's just now another thing that you need to be doing. But bless your hearts. I know that you're doing it because you care about kids, and this really has the potential for making a difference in kids' lives. So thank you. Call us if you have questions. And we'll do our best we can to support you as you go through this. Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Debbie.